Everybody, in this video we're going to talk about AUM, one of the performance attributes for a hedge fund. Assets under management, acronymed as AUM, is a very critical parameter for defining what is the performance of the fund from year on year basis. Okay, so what does AUM mean? Many investors, many participants think that AUM is a value of the capital that has been contributed by the limited partners into the fund. That is not correct. Okay, the correct answer for AUM is that it is the market value of the investments made by the fund manager. So therefore, if nothing has changed in terms of capital subscriptions into the fund, an increase in the AUM reflects the fact that the fund manager has done really well on a year on year basis. So AUM as assets under management is a very important performance attribute, performance metric for finding out what would be the value of the fund. So let's break this down. First, let's understand what is a hedge fund. A hedge fund, as we already know, is a pool of funds that is contributed by the different limited partners. The fund manager, uh, you know, collects all the capital, he pools the capital, he then invests the capital into different investments across markets, across currencies, across securities, and then we calculate what is the market value of these securities. So unlike a private equity fund which invests in unlisted equities, and therefore there are different valuation methodologies of finding out the portfolio value. In the case of hedge funds, since most of the capital received by the hedge fund is invested in listed stocks, traded instruments, sometimes in opaque instruments like exotic options or exotic derivatives. Otherwise, for all practical purposes, we are able to extract a fairly reasonable valuation of the assets that the fund has invested in. Okay, now the fund itself is reporting its AUM in a single currency. Okay, but at the same time its investments are in different currencies. So what is the currency recognition that they have to consider while converting the value of those assets in different currencies into the dollar currency, for example? Okay, so AUM is a very specific attribute, and therefore when asked at an interview what is an AUM, it's very clear that you must mention it is the market value of all the invested securities or invested capital of the fund. Why is AUM important? If there is no further increase in the capital inflow into the fund, an increase in AUM reflects the fund manager's performance. So it's really good. Okay, if it's a really good fund and the fund manager is very aggressive in trading and securities, or he's able to spot the right opportunities in different markets and different assets, he's able to time the pricing, he's able to time the markets, etc., the value of the investments would increase year on year, the value of the capital. But remember that the AUM is not the only performance metric, because the reason being that the fund is also receiving capital into it. Okay, many hedge funds are open ended, unlike private equity funds which are close ended. So they receive capital into the fund on an ongoing basis. Okay, so when capital comes into the fund manager doesn't invest the capital the very next day. They have to identify opportunities, they then invest the capital. After identifying the right opportunities, they do an asset allocation of the capital, etc. So then the capital is invested into those securities. There would be a time lag between the capital that is received and the capital that is invested. So again, over here you will find that the AUM has increased, and suddenly you might say, oh wow, the AUM has increased exponentially. But check out the first thing, has the capital into the fund also increased? Okay, so if inflows increase, obviously the fund manager has a lot more money, a lot more capital to play around with, and they use that capital to invest in securities. So the right answer for defining AUM is assets under management is the market value of all invested securities. That is the right definition of AUM. It is not the sum total of capital allocation If it is greater than the capital inflow, then it's a case of performance or outperformance. If it's lesser than the capital inflow, that means the fund manager has made significant losses and the markets are perhaps bearish in nature, then the capital that has come into the fund has been compromised and that has been reduced as well. So then the AUM will turn lower than the previous years. Can an AUM ever be negative? That would be a very fast stretch. You have to be very, very successfully unsuccessful. You have to be consistently bad performer, poor performer, and the LP should be sitting quiet. They love you so much that they sit quietly and watch as you are continuously making losses, and they don't take out the capital. So the AUM hardly turns negative. The AUM turning lower year on year basis itself is a very, very negative sign from the investor's perspective. And in such a case, clearly the LPs are not going to sit quiet. They're going to they may withdraw the capital from the fund and move on to another fund or to another fund manager who is more aggressive and who is more successful in stock selection, in country selection, in asset selection, and is able to get more capital. So an increase in AUM by itself is not enough to say that the fund has outperformed. We have to check whether there has been an increase in the capital or inflows as well, because of which the assets under investments could have assets under management could also have increased. So the AUM, while it is a important attribute, it is not the only attribute, and nothing much can be said conclusively if there is an increase in the AUM or if there is a decrease in the AUM.